years, then you can get what they.
Okay, there we go.
And you get your APRC, which is kind of like your permanent residence. So still not citizenship, but it really helps with a lot of things. Like instead of, for instance, you paying, usually your income tax was 18%, now it can drop down to 6%. And you can, and then like with a permanent residency, let's say for whatever reason I lost my job tomorrow, I would be able to stay in Taiwan indefinitely without a job. Usually you need that job to stay in the country.
Secure the visa, yes.
Yeah. But I know in Taiwan as well, because I've also got 2 children, and obviously they've got their Taiwanese and their South African passports. But I think it's also got to do with how many nationalities they actually let you have, things like that. I think in Taiwan, you're not allowed more than 2 passports. Yeah.
Okay, all right, let me just welcome everyone as they're joining. I see we've got a few people in already. We'll just give a few minutes for more to join on, those who are struggling with VPN issues if you're out in China. And you don't really need a VPN if you're in Korea. Is a VPN a major thing for you in Taiwan, Matt?
No, I mean, obviously it depends. People usually use VPNs for sport. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, everything's pretty okay. Yeah.
All right. I see
Korea,
quite a few people on. Yes.
Korea as well. If you really got to have your US Netflix fix, then, or you want something like Tubi or something, then yeah, but it's not restrictive here or anything. It's more all the streaming content and other things is geared towards Korean content. So if you don't want that, then yeah, get a VPN. But
I always
don't
had a
use one.
VPN for the American Netflix and for BBC. That helped a huge amount.
Yeah, well, VPN in China is, well, if you want your Western media, Facebook, YouTube, the rest, VPNs in China is a must. Couple of years ago, Express was the big one, but they have fallen out of favor recently, and they don't really work as well in China anymore. As far as I understand, Astral is the best to use in China at the moment, and they are a bit expensive, but apparently there are very few restrictions placed on Astral in China at the moment.
This is the other thing. When you are looking at a VPN, particularly, from any country, it doesn't matter where you are, never go for those lifetime ones where you pay a large amount up front, because they go through stages. This year, they're the best. They work. Next year, they don't work. And then you paid a lifetime membership or something. So just stick to the money. Okay, I see we've got quite a few people on. So I'd like to welcome everyone that is watching. Speakers, we have Matthew from Taiwan. We have Scott from South Korea. We have Stefan, who is at the moment inside South Africa, but on his way back to China, and he was in China previously, he and his wife. And you have a 3-year-old, is that right?
Yes, we have a 3-year-old. He's going to China for the first time. He's made in China, born in South Africa, and he's going back home, basically.
And I myself, Matthew, I lived in China for some time. I've lived in the UK as well, and I spent 15 years living in South Korea. So I have quite a bit of knowledge and experience living in different parts of the world. And the aim of this webinar really was, because I deal with so many clients out in Asia and Europe, was to more for my Asian clients, something that comes across regularly is people want to know how difficult it really is. What are the challenges that one has? And I thought it would be good to put together a webinar, a discussion sort of style format where we can have an open discussion on things such as living in Asia. What are the pros and cons? What are the challenges? What are the things that you struggle with? What things are misconceptions that you imagine, for example, there's not going to be any roll-on. 10 years ago, there wasn't any roll-on in Korea, for example. Now there is. So you don't need to pack 20 roll-on sticks just because you think it's going to be extremely hot. So that sort of discussion. And I think Please feel free to chip in at any point. Give us your views. I will run a poll later on with some questions for those who are in the chats, so we can get an idea and maybe fine-tune things for the next webinar if we do another one, so we can more address the things that everyone is really interested in speaking about. So the first part, that I thought we could discuss is when you're going to live in Asia. And we were chatting about this briefly before we started now. Scott was saying, when he sort of went there, and the same as when I went there, things were very different. We were going there often. This is now 2006, Scott. I think you said 2012. It was because we wanted to travel and to see the world, have a break. Now people are going there for different reasons, and that's something I've come across. It's because you've got a degree in South Africa, all this debt, but you're not willing to work for 9 or 10,000 rand a month, which is not going to get you anywhere. So Asia seems quite lucrative. What were your reasons? Scott, if we can start with you, then go through Matthew and then Stefan. What were your reasons? Why did you end up going to Asia?
Okay, well, also, I'll give it a little bit of back history. In 2007, I originally went to Japan for travel, and I had never traveled outside of South Africa, and very comfortably on the JET program, which is public school teaching, very sheltered. And I was there for 2 years, enjoyed the teaching. So I went back to South Africa, decided to do this as a career and got a teaching degree, and then went back to Korea because, it was all the rage. A lot of people were talking about it then, 2012. And also, at that stage, it was about traveling and experiencing different cultures. From Korea, you can very easily hop to different countries around Southeast Asia and Asia. It is a world-class, high-tech country. Everything works. Salaries are higher, and quality of life. But then, as the years progressed, it became less of, I'll just stay 1 more year. And only recently have I decided, okay, this is now going to be a permanent thing. Okay. Yeah. So I hope that that clarifies that.
And you, Matt, what initially prompted you to go?
Well, for me is I'd finished studying at my university, and I was finding it very difficult to find a job in my field. Or at least a job where I could earn enough to actually move out and save, which is obviously a very important thing. You don't want to live paycheck to paycheck, especially when you're in your mid-20s and things like that. You want to try start earlier. I was lucky though. I had a few friends that were teaching English in Taiwan. Unlike Scott, I didn't go and get my teaching certificate, but I'm actually currently doing that. But what was nice about Taiwan is you could come here and teach, and you can still do it. If you have a degree of any kind, you could come. You can. I mean, I did public relations. I came, and because I came from an English, where English is first language, I came here. Mine, I didn't even thought about traveling. I just thought about getting out of my out from under my parents' thumb, being more independent and getting out there, and similar to Scott, I never really thought I'd be here 12 years later. I also thought, I'd earn some money, maybe decide about studying something different, and then head back home eventually, pay off my debts, And again, I got here, and the quality of life was definitely, it was a big wake-up call for me to realize how much you think about in the back of your mind with South Africa. A case in point, in South Africa, you wouldn't walk down to the shop by yourself at 2 in the morning, that would never cross your mind. And I realized when I got here, that was actually a stress that was lifted off my shoulder, and it really was, it really changed my viewpoint completely. And since then, and also people were very friendly. Obviously, you need to be respectful and things like that. But, I've learned so much here, and I have been able to travel and things like that. And it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah, if I can quickly jump in there. I was hoping to have someone on the call, not only males, the aim was to have, and I did have, but unfortunately they weren't able to make it today. And that's the one thing from most of the women that I speak to. Their biggest thing when they speak to me, they say it's the fact that they can go to the shop if they need to 2 a.m. in the morning, late at night, early morning. They can walk to their works, and not be even being afraid, or it's not even in their mind. It's not even something they've even thought about, because it is just so much safer.
And it does, and mentally, it does really, really make a difference. You don't realize it because you've lived in South Africa constantly. So it's always been there. And please understand, I'm also not trying to badmouth South Africa.
No, absolutely not.
My experience, but you don't realize it until you're out, that actually that is something. I remember getting home and keeping keys in my hands in case someone tried to come and, take something from me while I was trying to get into my house or something, But in Asia, at least. Yeah.
My biggest problem here in South Africa is the fact that I need to remember my keys, and I can't just, actually now that I have a baby, my wife also keeps telling me, you can't just leave the baby in the trolley and walk away. It used to always just be followed with something else, but it's something that you wouldn't even consider, it wouldn't be questioned. So Stefan, what made you first decide to go to China?
Okay, so I actually went to China later than most people. Usually you go in your early 20s, so on. I have finished studying at that stage for about 5 years. I've been working as a graphic designer, as a multimedia designer for 5 odd years. And after some personal issues and a divorce and so on, I decided that I need to broaden my horizons, and I wasn't surviving on a graphic designer salary in South Africa. So the initial thought was maybe Cape Town, because that is South Africa light. And I came across a Facebook post that said teach in China. And I'm like, well, how far can I go? My mother's a teacher. I've taught before in my life. I can do it. And I applied. I didn't really think much of it at that stage. But during the process, and this is something that I come across with people applying now, finding the process strange, because it's not the way we do it in the West.
Yes.
Everything running through WeChat, getting your contract through WeChat.
Yeah.
And I found it strange. And literally when I got there, I was in contact with at least 3 people to make sure that I am not being trafficked, that I'm not going to end up in an ice bath somewhere with my kidneys cut out. Because it is a strange process. And like I said, I went later in life than most people. I went at the age of 28. So I have lived my youth, my 20s in South Africa. But once I got there, I also realized that, like Matthew said, you're a completely different person that side, because you don't have these weights on your shoulders about keep your head on a swivel, and so on, walking around at parks at 2 a.m. in the morning. Now, look, I'm a bigger guy. You're not going to really take me down easily if you're alone. But even a big guy like me, we have that weight on our shoulders, like keep your head on a swivel, put everything away and everything. And whereas in China, I forgot where my keys were most of the time because my front door was open. So yeah, that's why we went. I went. My wife has a completely different story. And in the beginning, it was going to be a year, maybe 2 years. Come back, save money, come back, and then after putting my life on pause for 2 years, come back. But after being back in South Africa now for almost 4 years, my wife and I have made the decision that this flight is out. It's not putting life on pause. It is. People look at us strangely when we say we're going home.
Yeah, it's amazing how very easily it becomes home being abroad, depending on what your reasons were for going there. So one of the things you mentioned very briefly earlier is, yes, so you thought you were being, the way that things are handled differently, so you thought you may be being trafficked or something like that. How did you find the whole going across process, the finding a job? How difficult and confusing was it? How easy is it now, like for yourself, Scott, Matthew, you've been there for a while. Is it as difficult as it is finding a job in South Africa, or is it much simpler? Is it easier? Did you guys go through recruiters? Did you manage to do it all yourself? How complicated a process was it? If we start again with you, Scott.
Okay, so the first time I did use a recruiter, which, as for a first-time expat traveler, I would say yes, use a recruiter, but get informed, because yes, there are not all recruiters are good. The best thing you can do is, because there are so many expats already overseas, join the Facebook groups, do your homework, really ask questions. Everyone's been through it before you, and they will help. Don't go into it blindly. You're making a huge decision that is, you're upending your life. As a first time, I did use a recruiter. Now, having been in Korea for 10 years, I only look for employment myself personally within the country. Okay. And
it's relatively easy to find.
It is once you're here, because and the COVID pandemic obviously made the whole process much slower and more chaotic. The bureaucracy of the process, it does take a lot of time, so start early. Make sure you get all the documents that you need early, because especially in South Africa, it does take a while to get things like a police clearance, and then the apostille of things. You'll learn about what those are. Do not leave it to the last minute. And there's join the groups and get that information. Once you're here and your documents are on file, it makes it a lot easier to jump from job to job within the country. Yeah. Okay.
Matt, on your side, how was it finding a job?
I mean, I also went through an agent. I mean, in Taiwan, especially, I think myself and Scott are talking predominantly about the teaching industry in our But when I got here, I got through an agent. I mean, I can tell you honestly, in Taiwan, I think if you can, rather try and join the Facebook groups and get your information from there. Not all agents are horrible, but it's their job. They also want to make their money, and I've seen many times it becomes a big thing. And on the actually just recently, yesterday, my friend shared something with me where people are going back and forth at each other. Agents are accusing foreigners of not reading the contract and things like that, But if you can find a solid agent, that's fine. But I've also found that many of the schools are also willing to contact. If you, let's say, are part of the they will put their emails on there. Give them, I can tell you now, especially in Taiwan. I'm not sure about Korea and China, but and again, I'm talking about the teaching industry specifically. I know we're not just talking about the teaching industry, but they really are, because of COVID and things like that. There are many positions and many and it is quite easy to get into. One thing to touch on that Scott said as well. You do need a fair amount saved, because when you come here, the school who employs you or your agent, they may give you a small loan, but they're not going to pay your deposit on your apartments. They're not going to buy you a scooter, or at least, even though public transport is great, lots of these things you have to take into consideration. Remember as well, so if you're coming, and that's the thing, is once you're settled, like I think in any Asian country, you're pretty much good to go. But that first year is going to be tough, and you're going to have to cut corners. I had to cut many corners when I was coming here. But then once you get through that initial year, then you're good to go. But I mean, I know coming to, and this might scare some people off, but you want to be comfortable. You don't want to. You've already got so many new things happening to you. You've got to now join a new school, a new job, all these things. You don't then also want to have to worry about, wow, where am I going to get this much rent and things things like that. So one thing I would say is save up and when I say a fair amount of money, I mean, you know, I would say maybe between 10 and 15,000 rand. I mean, that would probably be on the lower scale, but you could still survive, you know. And if you were in look, here's businesses in Asia as well, because I do have friends in that work in other areas, you know, other things, and in engineering and things like that. And businesses are very they will help you very, very easily. They don't mind helping and whatever. But obviously, you've also got to be organized and things like that. You can't, you know, and as Scott mentioned, do your research, and especially do your research about the country. One thing I'll tell you, when I tell people I come from Taiwan, they say, "Oh, do you live close to Bangkok?" It's like, no, it's not Thailand. We're in Taiwan, you know. And you know, and that's the thing. People always, obviously, it's great to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's, you know, just realize you're going to have to make some sacrifices, and it is very much pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, you know. And even having friends here, you know, they were in the same position as me, where they couldn't necessarily loan me all this money that I needed, you know. So adding on to what Scott said, you definitely make sure you have a little bit of money that you can
savings, yes.
And this is excluding obviously your tickets and things like that. But you know, but I mean, for the most part, yeah, I think if you did your research and things, and like I'm just going back to Scott all the time, but people are very willing to help. You know, South Africans help South Africans. You know, we only want what's best. And I mean, it's not just South Africans help South Africans. South Africans help everybody. But you know, join those groups, and don't just join the teaching or engineering groups. Join the community groups as well. You know, very important that you try and keep your hobbies. Like when I came here, a big thing for me was to find a soccer club. You know, because I love playing soccer, and you know, because you're moving you are moving to a totally different culture. You know, you do want some form of comfort. You know, and it's nice to even if you were into bike riding, I mean, archery, anything. See if you can find a group and talk to people with similar interests. That makes it very much easier to come over.
Well, someone I was chatting to last week, we were chatting very briefly on mental health and mental awareness, and that's something that she brought up that she thought was very important to discuss during this webinar. You do need to join those local community groups, because it can be, particularly if you've just gone out there on your own. Some people go together with a partner, some go on their own. It can be an extremely lonely place, being in a foreign country where no one speaks English. You don't know anyone. You're far from your family. The food's different. Everything is different. You know, you need that support. So you need to join local community groups. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Africans in almost every city who'd be more than willing to go and have a drink or a cool drink or a meal with you. So reach out. So, Stefan, what was your reason for going, and how difficult was it for you in terms of finding a job on that side for you and your wife now the second time round, for example, as well?
Okay, well, the first time around, like I said, I went over because of a divorce and depression, and I just wanted to get away. My wife, the first time, now here's the interesting part, is we went over separately. We met in China, and our experience going over and getting a job is completely different. And this is a personal opinion. This is not a fact, but I personally I will tell someone, especially if you're going to China, stay away from agencies. There is a difference between a recruiter and an agent. An agency, you work for the agency. The agency pays your salary, and the salaries are 9.5 times out of 10 a lot lower than you would receive from the school itself. I'm going to give a number here. The school that I ended up working at, my first school, offered other foreign teachers 15,000 per month, whereas with my agency I only got 7.
Wow.
So they literally took more than half of what the school is offering foreign teachers. So I cannot say this unilaterally, but as my personal opinion is to stay away from agencies. Find a recruiter. There are 100 websites where you can find teaching jobs, especially if you do your TEFL through one of these websites. They look for jobs. They have job listings on their websites. Either get a recruiter to look for schools, which is a great thing. That's the way we're doing it this time around, or contact the schools yourself. And don't use Google. People always say, but I can't find any information on Google because China does not have Google. Use Bing, use a translator, and use Baidu. There you'll get the information from. My wife went over with a big company. She went over with English First. So her way of getting there was much easier than mine. She had a English speaking pickup at the airport that took her to the school, and they're the other foreigners. Whereas I landed in Beijing and I don't speak Chinese, and no one else speaks English. So I would say, if you're going to set out looking for a job, look at a recruiter, point one. Look at a company. There are many international English teaching companies in China. EF being, I hear now, getting smaller, but they were one of the biggest ones. And then, as Matthew said as well, get involved with the communities online before you go. That was my lifesaver at the end of the day, because the day before I boarded a plane, I posted on a Facebook group, foreigners in Shijiazhuang, where I lived. I'm on my way here. I am boarding a plane now. Any South Africans there? And interestingly enough, the person that answered is today my wife.
Hey.
Wow. That's the best meet cute I've ever heard. Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
Because, like I said, the way she landed in China was, I always tell her that she was coddled, because EF gave her an apartment with roommates. They showed her around. She had a foreigner community surrounding her completely the whole time. But the problem with that is, especially if you want to go over for saving, they're going to show you the foreigner markets. They're going to show you the international supermarkets, the import markets, and those are expensive. Those are extremely expensive.
Yeah,
the way I landed there is, I landed in Beijing. My pickup did not speak English. I got put in a car and told, you're going to the train station now, using translation apps all the way because I didn't speak the language yet, and taking the train from Beijing to Shijiazhuang, which we're not used to, these massive train stations that make Park Station look like a tuck shop. It was scary. I literally, in the car on the way to the train station, I sent my now wife, my friend at that stage, I sent her a message. I'm like, here's my mother's number, here's my brother's number, here's the international number for my agency. I'm being trafficked. I have the screenshot of that message saved on my phone today.
You know what, I can actually relate to that. The first time I arrived in China, when I first went abroad to China, such and to work there, I don't remember which airport it was that I flew into, but I flew into Shanghai and then into one of the local smaller airports at 2 a.m. in the morning. And there was just one sort of security guard at the customs desk and me coming through. And now I'm thinking I have a suitcase full of Panados, and Scott and I were talking about this earlier. You tend to go with Western medicine. I think if they, because no one speaks a word of English, if they misunderstand this now, I'm screwed. It's going to be a major issue. And then, yes, going from there, being taken by someone who didn't understand a word of English to some small place. And I was also, if I was the sort of person that cries easily, I would have, and this is the one thing that I want to say, all of us, when we first went abroad, did go through some form of recruitment agency, and that is a good thing to use. Yes, you get good ones, you get bad ones. And I think it's worthwhile knowing and going with that mindset that if you're not with the brilliant one, you generally, once you're there, with some countries, you have to wait out a year, but it's all part of the experience. You know, if you end up in an apartment like I did my first year, which was smaller than my bathroom back home in South Africa, it's part of the, you know, the experience of living in Asia, you know, walking around the block, because you have no idea where you are. No one speaks a word of English. And if you get lost, that's it. And then slowly expanding. That is all part of the excitement and experience of going to work in a foreign country where no one speaks English.
That is so true. Because when I landed at my apartment, now the part of the city I was in was very far southeast of the city. It was still the rural part of the city. So in my little community, I was the only foreigner. There were no other foreigners. My apartment, at least I had a bigger apartment, Matt. I had a 2-bedroom apartment. In what they called a furnished apartment, I had a bed, a couch, and I had a fridge. That's it. So that comes in with Matthew, where you said save a little bit of money. This time we are going over, because we're a family and we have a little boy. We're going over with 150,000 rand to make sure that our transition is as comfortable as possible.
Yeah,
But
you really have to be prepared to give up a lot of comforts, creature comforts, and you get that mindset very early on that you are cutting and pasting yourself into a whole different world, paradigm, culture. Particularly South Africa, we're spoiled for space in all of just the fact that swimming pools are fairly common. No one has swimming pools in any houses in South Korea. My first apartment in Japan, I could reach everything by stretching out my arm. And I got a t-shirt saying, congratulations on being the sexiest South African in Omiya, you know, because I was the only South African there. But I've still got it. And that's also goes back to, you really have to do your homework about going to a culture, not only the cultural things, but different things that are legal and illegal. Particularly like Korea, if you, a lot of people get stopped for bringing codeine, any medication that has that, it's illegal to bring it. And they will just expect that you knew this, because you're buying a ticket, you're getting the visa, you're going to the country, so you got to know. They're not going to tell you when you get there. You have to prepare yourself, and you can never do enough. We're in the, you got to know the industry that you're going into. So for example, it's not just teaching English. That's a very broad term. But within that, there's, okay, are you going to public school teaching English? Are you going to the private after-school companies? Those are the hug ones. Or are you going to try and get into the international school market, which is a lot more competitive, a lot better paying, but it has a lot more qualification requirements, okay? And then there's little gaps in between that as well, okay? And I see a lot of people on the groups asking about, oh, okay, well, I've been in video production, or I'm filmmaking for 10 years. I've made this and this. I don't want to be an English teacher. I want to go work in the Korean film industry. I can do this. I'm a professional. And it's like, yeah, but how good is your Korean? You've got to then motivate why you should get that job rather than a Korean person, because they're hiring English teachers here because you have a skill that most Koreans don't possess, and that's why you're valuable. Now, it's not unlikely to get jobs in other industries, but it's very, very difficult, because you would then be taking it away from a Korean person, and you'd have to be exceptional to do that. So, and also each, like Stefan was saying, and Matthew as well, each country is unique in its context within like teaching English. It's a lot different in Korea as it is in China and in Taiwan. And I was in Japan and Saudi Arabia, so I can speak a bit about those. Each context is different in terms of doing this particular job. So it is also, again, just join those groups, do that homework, don't rush this process. If you decide today, okay, I want to go teach English, then you're probably going to be ready for, at the earliest, January, or probably better next year this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so from the accommodation side, it might be a hell of a lot smaller than you used to back home. I often tell people, try and get photos of accommodation before you go. That's the best way, but don't expect what you have back home. It could be a huge amount smaller. Right, then the other side of that in terms of, salaries. What is the average sort of salary? Because you often get those where you get high, like Stefan was saying earlier, you get lowball, 7,000 RMB or yuan versus the 15,000. I have some clients who earn 60,000 RMB. I have clients in Korea, some who are still earning 1.8 million, and then I have others who are earning nearly 4 million. So it's, what is the average sort of salary, and what would you say is a lowball salary that you shouldn't really accept, that you should rather just look for a different job for? If we start again with you, Scott, and then work through Matthew.
Well, as I mentioned, there's different streams of this industry. Sadly, it is kind of saturated. So salaries have not progressed in the last 10 years.
No, not at all.
Yeah, the average starting salary has actually gone down. When I came in 2012, the starting salary was 2.5 million Korean won. Now that sounds like you're a millionaire, but that I would say is about 30,000 Rand.
Yeah.
And which is great for a starting salary in South Africa, but cost of living in Korea is a lot higher. Now, some things are cheaper, like healthcare and eating out and things. Basic fresh produce is a lot more expensive, but on that salary, you can survive quite comfortably and save. But now the average starting salary is actually around 2.1 million. So think 25,000. Okay. And some places, you'll usually get a housing allowance or an apartment on top of that. So you won't be paying rent, or your rent will be taken care of in a very basic accommodation. You're not going to have a mansion, but unless you're lucky like Matthew was. But he worked up to that. But that's around the starting salary here, and then it does go up annually, and there are perks that you get, payments at the end of each year in terms of, or now it's a cumulative, but a severance payment, and but deducted from that, you will have tax, you will have, South Africans don't pay pension, but yeah, so 2.1 to 2.5 is the basic starting salary in Korea. Some places might be a bit more generous. International schools, it'll be 3 to 3.5 million. And there they look more at qualifications and years of experience because they have more rigid pay scales. But like I said, that's very tough to get into. You have to actually be a licensed teacher plus of years at an international school. That's a whole different conversation, but it's worthwhile looking into, especially if you have a specialist subject teaching qualification. I'm trying to think, Matthew, from Korea, salaries, so under that would be lowballing. Don't even consider. There's Matthew, university teaching jobs as well, but
What would you say for Taiwan? What's an average sort of salary, and what would be lowballing?
Look, it will also depend how hard you want to work, because I know at the schools here, you can work, you can work afternoons, you can work mornings and all the way up through to like 9 o'clock. But I mean, if you're looking on your average 8-hour day, it would probably be roughly the same, around 60 to 65,000 NT. Now, that also one thing in Taiwan, that would be your base salary, and what they do is they obviously give you lots of incentives so that climbs higher and higher. But I would say as well, because you have to start somewhere, not many people will walk straight into international schools and things like that. Yeah. And so like for me as well, I started in a bushiban, we call them here, and that's another thing. Remember, your first job is probably not going to be your dream job. You're going to have to smile through your teeth, because culturally it's different as well. But sorry, going back to the pay, I would say roughly the same. If you're willing to work, you could do a kindergarten job in the morning, and then from 1 to 6 or 7 you work at a different school, and then you could earn as much as 40 or 45,000. But it totally depends on you. But I would say, similar to what Scott said, like if you're getting anything lower than 1,000 rand, I think that would be a bit. But again, as well, it depends. If you're only working 5 hours a day, then you're probably not going to be earning that much, But if you are looking at a proper school where you're willing to work 8 hours a day, then yeah, I'd say around about that. And in Taiwan, similar to what Scott said as well, unfortunately, the base salaries haven't gone lower, but they've just stagnated. They haven't really. But I know that the government here is trying to change that. But yeah, I mean, just also one thing when you're coming over, and again, Stefan and Scott, I'm not sure if it's the same with you guys, but now I'm at a school where I finish at 4:30. I start at 8, finish at 4:30. Many schools here, just remember, you may start at 10 and finish at 7. The working time is a bit different too. So that is one thing, because I remember when I first came here and you're finishing at 7. It's very different in Cape Town, where I'm from, where you finish at 4 or 4:30, 4 o'clock on a Friday. You know what I mean? Here, that's another thing that you just have to realize. But anyways, yeah, I think also roundabout what Scott said, roundabout if you're getting lower than 30,000 rand, which again is, and please understand, that can increase just depending on how much effort you would to put in. But yeah, if anyone's offering you lower than that, you should be able to find a company that offers that or more. Again, as I said, depending on how many hours you work. I cannot speak for other industries, but like I mentioned before, I have friends in other industries, and I know, for instance, Taiwan engineers are very well paid. Very, very well paid. It's if you're in the upper echelons of IT, maybe development or anything like that, you can also earn a lot of money. I can't give you specifics, but it's definitely more than teaching English. But also to add to what Scott said as well, is if you are looking to get into any other industry, you're going to have to learn the language. My friend, he went to work at Nike over here, and they said you have 3 months. If you don't know the language, and they don't expect you to be, professors speaking and everything or saying everything correctly. Obviously, there's going to be some mistakes, but they do expect you to have a very good basic understanding, because it's obviously it's unfair to think everybody needs to change because of you, because of one person, whereas you coming into this company. It just shows a lot of respect as well.
Yeah. And in China, Stefan?
Okay, so in China, once again, it depends on where you're going. You basically get 3, maybe 4, depending on how you see it, kinds of schools you can go to when it's teaching. You get your training schools, which is like EF and so on and so on. They will most likely be the ones that pay you the least, but your working hours will be less as well. It's like Matthew said, you might not work in the morning, but you will work from 3 in the afternoon, but that you will be working till 8 at night. And their weekends are different as well. Their weekends usually are Monday and Tuesday, whereas a normal school setting, it'll be Saturday and Sunday. If you want to go for a higher salary, rather go to the international schools. You can get into public schools, but getting into public schools is immensely difficult because you need to be able to speak Chinese fluently. Not just basic, but fluent Chinese to get into the public school system. And then you get kindergartens. Kindergartens is a hit and a miss. Some kindergartens will offer you a lot of money, and then you're probably the only foreign teacher there teaching all the China, all the classes. So you are running from class to class from 7 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. That's what I did in the beginning. And yes, they offered 15,000 Rand for a foreigner that worked for their for one of their campuses, but you will be the only foreigner on campus. What I would say is, and I'm seeing this a lot in the Facebook groups at the moment, I'm calling it "I know my worth" movement going on. People that are going over the first time and they're like, "I'm not accepting anything less than 20,000." Good luck.
Yeah.
If you're going over the first time and you're expecting 20,000, you better be fluent in Chinese. You better have 12, 13 years of international experience, because it's not going to happen. First time, I would say 10 to 15 is a good starting point. Under 10, don't even consider it. Don't even consider under 10, just throw that away.
Are you talking in Chinese currency there,
RMB,
Stefan?
yes.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming RMB. So 10 to 15,000 is about sort of what, 2 million won, so to about 2.8 million won. So in rands, it's what? It's about 25 to about 35,000 Rand.
Yeah, it's about, but the thing is also the cost of living in China, if you exclude your rent, because that's my next point, is a lot of schools will offer you accommodation, or they will offer you an allowance. The problem with the allowance is a lot of landlords, as soon as they see that you're a foreign, they want up to 6 months rent upfront. And landing there the first time, you don't have, let's say, 15,000 times 6 to pay for an apartment. So I would rather look for schools that offer you accommodation, not just an allowance. And then I see a lot of people wanting to go over with their kids now, which we are doing at the moment. Then I would suggest try and negotiate for a tuition allowance as well, because schooling for international kids in China is very expensive. And then a salary of 15 without tuition allowance is not going to take you very far.
No, it does become expensive once you have kids, yes.
So I would say 10 to 15 is an average for beginning, but like I think Scott said as well, is get your foot in the door, get in the country, work out your first year,
easier once you're there.
Pay your dues. And I moved to another school and I moved out of my agency after my first year, and my salary jumped from 7,000 RMB, which was a low ball, to 20,000 RMB for a permanent position at Sesame Street English, which is an international school.
Yeah.
So get there, pay your dues, work your first year, suffer a little bit, and the important thing is live like the Chinese. Don't go and for the import markets. Don't go to the import markets. Go to the local supermarket where the meat might look a little dodgy, but it works.
Yeah. No, seriously, that is the truth. There's no sense in flying all the way from South Africa or wherever your home country is and trying to bring it with you. There's a lot of markets that expat markets that people set up to. You can find almost any product from South Africa here, but it will be 5 times more expensive than you're paying for it in South Africa, because they've had to import it and they want to make a profit on it. So get out of your comfort zone and experience the culture. If your goal is to save money, that's the first thing you can do is, okay, well, I'm here now. Go to the traditional markets, skip on buying that Nando's sauce that you really need, because yeah,
Well,
it's gonna be 3 times more. But yeah, I mean, okay, yeah.
the
So
one thing I can say, so I'm just going to launch a poll for everyone online in the background. So if you don't mind taking part in that poll to help us sort of see what the people look like that are on the call today, and we can try and see for the if we do another webinar how we can make this more applicable to you. So I'm going to launch that poll. The one thing I just want to very quickly say, by the way, Scott, is that the one thing I loved about Korea was that I could buy Mrs. Ball's chutney all the way from the US, have it delivered within the same sort of week, and get 5 bottles for the price of what somehow 1 bottle costs in South Africa.
wow, there are deals, yeah.
Still, yeah. So I'm very much conscious of the fact that we've been going on now for nearly 50 minutes. So I'm going to ask if you can give sort of brief answers to the next questions. Is it possible to save? So if you can say for Scott, Korea, Taiwan, Stefan, China, is it possible to save on the average sort of income? Yes or no?
Definitely yes.
Matthew?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And in China, Stefan?
Yes. Living like the Chinese, you can definitely save.
Okay. How easy is it to get help and advice when you are there? If you find yourself in a difficult situation, do you find that there are other South Africans willing to help you there? Or are you, as many imagine, stuck suddenly in a foreign country with no help?
Definitely a huge expat community of diverse nations, but particularly South Africans, always ready to help on a lot of Facebook groups. Korea is also very well set up with a hotline, a tourist hotline, but they'll help with any kind of general thing, and they speak English. Going into the day-to-day can be tricky if you are alone, and the bureaucratic process, things like banks and maybe going to a hospital or doing official things can be challenging, but there are definite avenues where you can get help because there's loads of expats who have been through whatever you've been through, I guarantee it.
And in Taiwan, Matt,
how easy is it
to get?
I mean, look here as well. I mean, I hate saying it, but I don't really speak much Mandarin yet, and I've been here 12 years. But I mean, in Taiwan, and I mean, honestly, from traveling around Asia is a very, very friendly for the most part. As I mean, I've had people go out of their way to help me. And these are Taiwanese locals. I had a guy get off his bus, get on my bus to make sure I got to where I was going. Just don't be afraid to ask for help. And have patience. They're also trying to, when trying to explain things. Obviously, you can be a bit impatient if you have to be somewhere at some point, but yeah, have patience. But really, I think it was touched on before, not just South Africans, I mean, of course, before, all my friends were South African. Now I come here, I mean, my best man was from America. I've got some of my best friends, Australian, from New Zealand, all over, So, I mean, yeah, the help is there. Just, don't be too proud or anything to ask for this, because that may be a problem. But really, I think also today with technology, I think really, honestly, in my opinion, there may be some hurdles you have to jump over, but I think it's much easier at least than when I came, And, but yeah, really, I mean, the help is definitely there,
Okay, and in China, Stefan?
Definitely, there's a huge expat community. South Africans, Australians, Americans, everyone wants to help. And I have a long story that I can't tell, but I'm not going to tell it now. But even the Chinese, as soon as they see you are foreign and you are struggling, they will help. They will go out of their way to help you. What you can do to help yourself with them helping you is, before you go, there's an app called Duolingo. Download it. Learn basic, like learn how to say hello and goodbye and thank you. That's basically it. Because
that will go a long way in any culture. The second that you've just made that connection, someone from South Africa saying calling you Habibi in Saudi Arabia as friend, they'll be they'll be shocked. Or just saying the most basic Korean phrase. It's wow. It's like a global connection has been made.
Yes.
And
Yes.
always just be nice, and then people will help you. Yeah.
Yeah, and then very quickly, what was your biggest challenge when you first went there?
Getting used to the different perceptions in culture about things like approach to work. Koreans have a very strong work ethic. So things like sick days are frowned upon. No one takes sick days. It's rather go to work wearing a mask, suffer through your cold, and not knowing the language, which I've learned, and now I'm at a level where I can do basic, navigate basic Korean daily life. I'm not nearly fluent, but not knowing the language made things difficult, because I went into public schools. I was in a small town, not a big city like Seoul, where I am now. So that was a challenge. So that's why also Stefan's tip about, Duolingo. Here there's an app called Papago, which is just great for translating. So that knowing a little bit of the language will help you. I didn't, so that was a challenge. Not understanding the processes that are different, the banking and the bureaucratic things operate a bit differently to how we're used to in South Africa or anywhere else. So those are the challenges, and I'll probably think of others as other guys answer. But
Matt, what was your biggest challenge?
I mean, transport was a bit of a challenge at first. I didn't have a scooter, and I mean, public transport in Taiwan is amazing, as I'm sure it is in Korea and China as well. But it's reading those numbers, like which buses go where, those kind of things. You know, I ended up just walking everywhere because I knew where to go. Didn't want to get on the wrong bus or anything. But of course, language. Language was always a bit difficult because when they're talking to you, they're speaking very basic Mandarin or Korean or something, and it's sometimes you don't know what they're saying, so it's a lot of pointing and things like that. But one thing that really nailed me was the humidity in Taiwan.
Okay, yes,
that is one thing I think. The weather, the humidity. I'm here, and even if I stay here for the rest of my life, I will never get used to the humidity. It's something I thought I could say. It's and I mean, you guys maybe think maybe one, or maybe if you get Bloemfontein or Uppington or I don't know, somewhere, but not like they have here. It's like walking through a sheet of water, and it really is something that will knock you back a little bit. But otherwise, those are also not just eating, but finding a healthy eating routine, because often when you get there, you're buying these little sandwiches from 7-Eleven because you're still getting used to everything. I mean, I don't know, and you speak about apartments, remember as well, there's no big kitchens and things like that over here. You have your hot plates and things, maybe a microwave, and as Stefan mentioned, the fridge. I mean, I had a bar fridge when I first came here, and that's so obviously just prepare, because you want to be of healthy mind and body, so it's to be able to buy your groceries and things like that. That was a bit of a challenge for me at first, but and then also I'm not sure if it's the same, but bottled water, like in South Africa you drink out of the tap, but here in Taiwan you don't drink out of the tap. So also buying bottled water now, even if I go back to South Africa, I buy bottled water. People think I'm rich, but
it's changing.
No, that was quite odd, because immediately you think, why can't I drink this water? What else? But no, those are the things but again, if you do put your best foot forward and you're willing to accept that there are going to be challenges, then you'll get through it.
But none of them sound insurmountable, at least. I just want to remind everyone about the poll in the background, if you wouldn't mind completing that, because that helps us with shaping the next one. Stefan, your side, what was your biggest challenge?
Okay, I have two, and I want to mention the first one first because I think I actually saw a post earlier today about this. I've got mental health issues. I suffer from bipolar and anxiety. So I have to drink my medication every day, and if I don't, I'm a monster. So going over, I actually went to my doctor. Look, I'm going over for a year. I'm going back for a holiday after a year. So I want a year's supply of my medication, which, by the way, they don't have a problem with you bringing in, but it was nerve-wracking. I think you mentioned it as well, Matt, with your Panados. It was nerve-wracking having a year's supply of mental health medication in my bag, but they do understand that you've got medication that you have to drink. On that note being said, in China, mental health medication is available. Point one. Point two, it's over the counter. You do not need a doctor's prescription to go and buy it. You can go to the pharmacy, you get your translation of what it is. You tell them, I need this. They ask you, how many boxes do you want?
Wow. I couldn't even get an asthma pump in Korea without first going to a hospital. They refuse to give it over the counter, despite seeing the fact that I'm not able to breathe. No, you need to get an ambulance first and go to a hospital. Yeah.
That's a good point you raised. I tried to get just I'm going through a lot at the moment, and so I tried to just get a Xanax, and I had to go and have a consultation first with a GP and then with a neurologist, and then they prescribed me 5 days worth. So it is again, that goes to research. If you are on any kind of medication that's permanent, you have to don't assume that you'll get it here. While the healthcare in Korea is fantastic, I had a MRI done in my lunch break, and it cost me less than what's 250,000 won, Matthew?
250,000 won is about, what is that in dollars? It's about 200. It's about 4,000 rand
for an MRI. That was straight done through national health insurance, and I didn't even have to wait. I literally did it in a lunch break, and but they are more conservative when it comes to any kind of medication that they're more conservative about mental health medication, any kind of mind-altering substance that's medication or drugs specifically. Yes, so do research about that if you do require medication.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Sorry,
in China, your country will actually say, please let the employer know. Now, a lot of people lie on that because they don't want the employer to know that I've got this and this and this and this. It's not that they want to exclude you. It actually says in the contract, let us know so that we can make special accommodation for you.
That's great. Wow.
I think they're a lot better than some of the other countries in Asia. Right, I want to open it up just briefly for a minute or two. If there are any questions that anyone has, I see one of the other guys online asked if there will be a recording of this because his VPN keeps cutting out. Yes, there will be a recording, and what I will do is it'll be automatically, they'll email a link to everyone that took part, and then I will also share it on the South Africans in Korea group, the South Africans in Taiwan, the South Africans in China groups, because I think it's thank you to the three of you. I think this has been an extremely helpful conversation, and hopefully it's been helpful for everyone else. If there's anyone who has any questions specifically for any of the panelists, please, you're welcome to chat into the Q&A, and we'll see if we can answer them quickly before we finish finish the webinar. Anything else you want to quickly add, Matt or Scott or Stefan?
Just do it. Don't
look back. Do it. Exactly.
Yeah. Take
the
that
first
step.
May be difficult, but do it because it's an experience.
I always find it funny. My wife finds it funny when I say, I finally made the decision that I'm going to do this when I was 30,000 feet in the air on my way, because then you can't turn around.
Yeah.
I see there's a question, public versus private schools, specifically in Korea, and that's something I can answer myself. Look, it goes through stages. I mean, I was there long enough for when everyone you wanted to be in public schools, and then it went through a situation, I think it was with the financial world crisis in 2008, where I was there when the governments couldn't afford to pay teachers and everyone started leaving government schools and going over to Hagwons. Then came, was it swine flu or MERS? It was one of the earlier pandemics. Yes, for the rest of you out there, COVID is not the first pandemic to hit the world. There have been quite a few others, and Asia reacts a lot more strongly than the rest of us do. And that's when a lot of the Hagwons started going bankrupt, and then everyone made the move back from Hagwons back to private schools. So it tends to go between one and the other. Honestly, you can get a good Hagwon or private school, and you can get a good government school. That's the thing, like everyone was saying, just go. After you've been there for your first year, you'll have more of an understanding of the culture, of the people, of the work, to be able to then also see, go and have a look, speak to the people around there when it comes to changing jobs. What about visa versus citizenship if you have the option? We won't answer that now in the call because that's a long conversation. And a lot of the time you won't have the citizenship option, not without a huge amount of rigmarole, marriage, or all sorts of other things. Many Asian countries don't like giving passports. That's a long conversation. Still waiting for the savings part in China. Yes, I was hoping that we'd be able to get around to that. Perhaps in our next webinar, we will focus more on that. I think the conversation has been going so well that there's actually a lot more to discuss than one actually imagines there is. Vaccinations for kids. That's a very difficult one. I don't know if you're speaking about China, Taiwan, or Korea. I do know, for example, Japan uses a completely different vaccine schedule than we do in the West, or than what Europe does. Different countries are different. So that'll be a long, much more complicated conversation, unfortunately. My daughter was born in Korea, but she was born in well, I say English hospital, it was a private hospital where they had one speaking English nurse that qualified as an English hospital. And there she was not vaccinated because we were not using the Korean vaccine schedule. We were using, I think, a Japanese one, mainly because there they allow you to develop your immune system until age 2 and then start. But different countries do things very differently. So you'd need to find out depending on where you are. Will there be another? Yes, there will be another session, and perhaps there we will focus on the actual savings side a bit more. Yes, so Marna, we will then sign up to the next one. I'll make sure that we do discuss the savings quite a bit more then. I didn't realize that would be, I thought perhaps this first one would be more people interested in what is it like being in Asia? How do we get there? If China initiates war with Taiwan, what happens with South Africa? We're not going to discuss that at the moment because that can be a long, much more complicated and political answer. It's a good investment answer for an investment case, though. Anonymous attendee, you're welcome. You're considering making the move, and thank you for this time. You have a master's in English education, so you should do very well. And for you in particular, look at the different countries, what they have to offer. Don't just jump in with one. Shanghai from Marina Swartz. Shanghai and Shenzhen is giving now permanent residence for foreigners with a PhD directly. Yes, so there are different options available, but again, it's a much more complicated conversation, and often there's a lot more involved than what the simple advertising is. Okay, then Portia, you're a student in China. Any advice on the route from going to being a student to a teacher? I don't know if you have much experience with that, but again,
I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I do have a friend that did go through it, so I don't have all the details. But once you graduate, rather to be safe, come back to South Africa, find a job, and then go over with your Z visa, not your student visa anymore, because your time allowed on a humanitarian visa, I think, speaking under correction here, is 3 months, And for you to find a job and have your documentation done and everything, 3 months is not enough. So rather come back and then get all your documents in order, get a job, and go over with a Z visa and go over legally.
And then finally, the last question, which I think we will answer before we say goodbye. Sorry, I'm looking at the one that was anonymous. I have an infant moving to China next year. Any thoughts? And since you have a 3-year-old, you know, I thought it'd be good. Let's just answer that, because I'm sure there are a few out there who do have children.
Okay, well, I'm not a single parent. It's myself and my wife. But if you're looking at a school, they're an infant, so they're not going to kindergarten yet. You're going to have to get either a nanny or an IE to look after your child during the day. They won't allow you to take the child to school, unfortunately. So get an IE once you're there. They usually charge about 3,000 kwai a month, 3,000 RMB. And once if you're looking to move permanently, look at a school that offers tuition for your child. So I would look at working at an international school or something, because they do offer tuition for your children at the school.
Okay. All right. Sorry. We're going to have to just leave things there. Otherwise, we'll carry on for days on end. Thank you to everyone for taking part. Scott, thank you so much for joining. Matt, Stefan,
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We'll do this again. We'll focus a little more on the saving side of it. But I think it would be nice to see, you know, everyone again, perhaps get a few more countries on board. Have a good evening to everyone in the Far East, and hopefully we will see each other again.
Oh, coming home soon, don't worry.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy the
Cheers,
rest of
everyone.
the
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Bye.